Tom Aspinall suffered a very unusual looking right knee injury in his fight against Curtis Blaydes, and in this video we're going to try to take a closer look at what exactly happened. Welcome back everybody, I'm Dr. Brian Sutterer, and this is your #1 source for learning about the unique medical side of the world of sports. This was a really unusual one here. We see Aspinall deliver this kick to Blaydes, and pay attention to the fact that it's Aspinall's shin that strikes on Curtis Blaydes' thigh. So what that's going to be doing, #1, during this contact, is it's going to be directing this force from the tibia pushing posterior relative to the femur. So keep that in mind, #1, for what could potentially be happening to the ligaments in the knee. The other thing that's happening here with this type of a kick is there's going to be a little bit of what we call valgus force on the knee. So whenever that kick swings in from the outside in this position, inward into Blaydes' thigh, there's going to be this tendency for the foot to kind of come out this way and the knee to bend inward this way. So that bending is going to induce a valgus force, potentially stressing the inside of Aspinall's knee. It's basically then right as Aspinall steps backwards that he reacts in pain. So right as he puts weight on that right knee, we see him reach down and grab. Now, one thing I thought about here was potentially a dislocation of his kneecap, but if we really zoom in here and focus, you can see how it looks like his patella or the kneecap is really in proper position here as he steps and lands. So I don't think this was a patellar dislocation. As this continues, of course, we see him grab. He's in immediate pain and interestingly refuses to extend that knee, which we'll talk about here too. One other view here to see these same points. Again, that kick comes into the side. The first load we're going to have is a load directing the tibia or shin bone backwards. But then because the kick is coming from the outside inwards, there's also going to be a little bit of component of valgus with the inside of the knee kind of bending. The first injury that comes to mind watching this is actually a PCL injury, and we'll talk about that and these scenes from the medical staff, but first I want to give a quick shout out to the sponsor of this video. This video is sponsored by Bare Performance Nutrition, a health and performance supplement company focused on optimizing the modern athlete. When it comes to supplements, two of the qualities I value the most are transparency and quality, and BPN checks both of these boxes. I want to know what I'm putting in my body and have the trust to know that what's on the label is what I'm actually ingesting. Two of the BPN products I want to specifically talk about are Strong Greens and Strong Reds. These are superfood powders that can help with a number of things like improving natural energy levels and optimizing gut health with probiotics and digestive enzymes. For me, it just helps with that general sense of wellness because frankly, I find it really hard to get all those nutrients from eating fruits and vegetables. With Strong Greens and Strong Reds, I'm getting greens that don't taste like grass and also aren't going to break the bank. So if you're ready to optimize your health and performance, then head over to BPN with the link in the description below to save 10% off your first order. I recommend trying Strong Greens and Strong Reds, but they have a number of amazing products like protein powders, nutrition bars, and energy supplements. These are health and performance supplements you can trust because everything has been tested for banned substances, which frankly is a must when it comes to high-level athletics. So take advantage of this great offer today by heading to the website in the description. And thank you again to Bare Performance Nutrition for sponsoring this video. I thought this sequence was really interesting here with the medical staff because we saw Aspinall did not want to straighten or extend his knee. And I don't know if they're giving him some sort of pain medication here. This is certainly something we don't see done in the States during fights, but potentially in Europe, they might have different regulations to potentially give him something to just help him relax, help with the pain here. We can see they're getting out this knee immobilizer brace here in yellow. So that tells me that there was enough concern for a ligament injury in the knee, suggesting some instability. We can see the one medical provider here on the end basically is maintaining some support of Aspinall's knee, and so something about their evaluation made them concerned that he had potentially a ligament injury that was making the knee unstable to where if they were to let go of it, the knee might dislocate or something like that. Like I said, the first thing on my mind when I watched this mechanism is actually a PCL tear. Now, Michael Bisping said on the broadcast that he asked the doctors what they thought might be going on, and they said something about an MCL just based on the amount of pain, and that's definitely on the list as well. But let's talk first about the PCL. With our biodigital anatomy tool here, let's talk about that PCL and also the MCL. So here we're just looking at the knee straight on. The fibula bone is over here, so this is going to be the outside of the knee, this is going to be the inside, and we're looking at the front. What I've done is I've shown the ACL in red and the PCL in green. PCL standing for posterior cruciate ligament. Cruciate because they cross within the knee joint, posterior because it's in the posterior part of the knee. The MCL, like we said, is also going to be on the differential. That's this ligament here running from the north to the south on the inside of the knee. You can imagine how if there's a force that bends the bottom of the leg out this way while the top of the femur is held rigid, what that might do is put a little bit of tension on that MCL as it wants to stretch as it's bending. So potentially when Aspinall delivered that kick, there's not too much valgus that I see, but a little bit with it coming from the outside in could certainly cause from, again, Blaydes' thigh sitting over here, hitting the tibia, pushing it out a little bit of stretch in that MCL. Moving on though to the ACL and the PCL. Again, I don't think this looks like an ACL injury mechanism. And if it is, it would be atypical just based on how he reacted. And we don't really see that shift, and the mechanism wouldn't fit either, but it does fit more with this PCL. So if we look here, the PCL runs from the posterior or the back of the shin bone or the tibia towards the front of the femur. So again, this is going to be the front or what we call anterior, and this is going to be the back or the posterior. So what the PCL is doing is it's preventing the tibia from moving posterior relative to a stable femur. These happen a lot in car accidents. Whenever somebody's shin slams into the dashboard, the femur and the knee want to keep going forward, the dashboard comes in and hits, pushes the tibia backwards, and potentially tears the PCL. So now instead of a dashboard, you imagine Aspinall's shin bone coming in, striking Curtis Blaydes' thigh right here. That's going to also cause this force where the tibia is pushed posterior as the rest of the femur and the knee want to swing forward. So again, we sort of get that stress that could potentially result in a PCL tear. Also, interestingly, if your PCL is torn or deficient, there's a tendency for your tibia to want to sag posterior or fall backwards. And what we saw them doing on the mat was basically supporting the back of his knee. So it almost gives me a sense as well that they might have been worried about the knee or the tibia falling posterior. So they're basically supporting that PCL ligament potentially by holding it in this position. So that's really what I'm thinking about number one here, because if we look again, all of that force as Aspinall kicks Blaydes' thigh is going to induce a force to cause his tibia to move backwards relative to the femur. And as vicious and as violent as this is, that's sort of like hitting your shin on the dashboard during a vehicle accident. So that kick comes in, the femur wants to keep going forward, the tibia gets hit backwards from Curtis's thigh. That can cause that tibia to shift backwards, potentially stressing that PCL. The other thing, of course, we talked about is the MCL, or the medial collateral ligament. So that sits on the inside of the knee. So here, remember with this kick, it's going to start on the outside, it's going to swing inwards. And so as that occurs, we see that force where the knee goes into a little bit of a valgus position, where the foot gets pushed outward relative to the knee coming inward. I'll admit the fact that Aspinall's leg is a little bit internally rotated. So basically his legs rotated kind of this direction. The toes are pointing more that way. It's kind of a straight on collision rather than a collision to the side. So it doesn't make me clearly think about the MCL, but still something on the differential. The evaluation here is really tough, right? Because obviously Aspinall was in so much pain and discomfort that they couldn't really get a good examination. The big thing we're worried about, number one, when you see there's no clear obvious fracture to the knee, is this a multi-ligament knee injury where the knee is dislocated? Because if the knee is dislocated, typically requiring 3 of the 4 ligaments to tear, that's like a true emergency. That's something where you've got to worry about blood flow, nerve damage, get somebody to the hospital really quickly. So that's why they're so urgently trying to examine his knee, because they want to make sure his knee is not dislocated. And I don't know if they were ever able really to do that unless we just didn't see it when the cameras were off of him. Some final thoughts here. It's reassuring that he was able to ultimately get the knee straightened out and extended. Anytime somebody has a knee injury, we worry about those 2 little pieces of cartilage, the menisci, potentially getting caught or stuck and making the knee lock up. So the fact that we saw Aspinall get his knee straight is a good sign, but as limited and as much pain as he was in here, the differential is still very wide open. Again, that PCL is just something at the top of the differential based on the mechanism. Everything else here is still on the table. Of course, you're going to see an MRI to look at ligament damage, X-ray to look at possible fractures from some of the ligaments or tendons maybe pulling on the bone, making sure that the tendons are intact, that the patellar tendon, the quad tendon are intact during that kick. It certainly didn't look like we saw anything retract, meaning snap up or snap down with the tendons in the leg, but something this violent, a kick, always going to be on the differential. So I hope this was helpful to take a look at the mechanism and relate that to some biomechanics and how it overlaps with the anatomy. Certainly, like I said, MRI to look at the ligaments. Certainly other things like fractures, tendon injuries, etc. can be on the differential here with a kick this violent, but hopefully it's helpful to correlate sort of what we see with potential PCL injuries to something with a kick like Aspinall delivered. Let me know as always any questions or comments down below, and until next time, we'll see you later.